Lovely to see you all. Thank you for attending. I'm sorry it's so cold today, although it is picking up. I did 2 talks this morning and I literally had to keep this jacket on, so I'm keeping it on for this. But we've got a wonderful panel. Thank you, guys. Amazing subject matter. Why don't we do a bit of introduction just to kind of tell everyone what the businesses are about, so we get a bit of an overview, and then we'll jump into some interesting discussion and debate. Luke, what do you do? Tell us about all of your myriad companies.
So Cartel.ai is a marketplace to access what we're calling the 10x creator. So imagine a 10x creator is the people that can leverage all of the best tools in AI and basically democratize sort of the ability for people to access the top 1% of AI innovators, we call them. You've probably seen some of their work. These are the guys, they're ex-ILM, they're ex-Disney, they're ex-Mill. And they're people that have basically embraced AI over the last 3 years versus sort of rejected it. So we have a platform that essentially allows people to access them as freelancers. That's one company. And then the other company is 8i and Spatial Studios, which is a 4D volumetric capture solution, which is streamable holograms, essentially. And these streamable holograms essentially have the ability with AI to turn them into unlimited camera positions, unlimited camera controls for directors and producers. So we have a studio in LA, and then Cartel is sort of the team that would work on that data.
Good afternoon, everybody. My name is Astrid Pilla. I'm so happy to be here. Thank you to Future Plus. Thank you, Shumi, for having me. I actually started in 2021. I'm the class of 2021 OG Clubhouse, just like Swan was talking about. We started in the immersive spaces, but now have graduated into AI and working with AI autonomous agents. So I've been working on Miku. She was born on New Year's Day. If you can believe it, she's only 6 weeks old. So, but this has been a project that has culminated from many years of working in the 3D space, AI space, and as well as Web3 space, of course, blockchain, and working with brands. So working with fashion, beauty, wellness, and we are bringing Miku into this brand new world, trying to make a better place for everyone. And the fashion, beauty, wellness space is going to be transformed by, as we were talking about, bringing personalization into the mix. And so this is going to be an incredible talk. I'm very excited for this incredible panel. Here we go.
Go for it, mate. Give an overview of Charisma.
Thanks, JC. And thank you so much. Great to be here today. And thankfully, I think it's warming up a little bit.
It's warming up. We're all right. We're gonna make it much hotter.
So my name is Guy Gadney. Hi, great to meet you all. I run a company called Charismatic AI. It's a spin out from Charisma AI. See what we did there. And in essence, what's interesting about the virtual agents for us is we want to see them in an entertainment environment. So we want them to do something. We want them to be in a story universe. And what we have developed over the last year is really something where if you have an idea for a story and you just have a title, like it might be, an Austen romance or something like that, you can put that into Charismatic, and we will generate all of the characters in that story, all of the narrative, all of the scenes, the story beats, and ultimately that then kicks out into a script and the prompts out into sort of short form video generation. So in essence, sort of provocatively, you could get from one prompt into a TV series in a matter of minutes. And we've been working on that with in the UK predominantly with the great Aardman Animations, who you might know from Wallace and Gromit, 8-time Oscar winners, public broadcast Channel 4. And a lot of that is because we believe that when we're looking at these technologies like AI, if they're going to be involved in the creative industries, we should develop them from within the creative industries and serve the writers and provide something that's sort of positive. So we're showcasing it up at the UK House, by the way, at the moment. I have it currently sitting in a 1950s suitcase with an old black and white small portable TV that you can see and come up and we'll make a story for you. So that's where we're at.
I think you had that piece of luggage last time I saw you. So, you just not updated it since last year. You pass it off as some nostalgic retro play, but actually it's just your luggage.
It's just cheap.
Yeah, it's just cheap. All right, let's do, Guy, while you've got the mic, let's just jump straight into kind of some of the key questions. So Paul Schrader, a couple of months ago, was messing around with AI. And Paul Schrader was the writer at okay, good. Just want to make sure we've got the right crowd in, yeah? An age-weighted reference there. And he was amazed at how deep and textured and colored the stories were. With storytelling, how much is AI changing the way that we are telling stories? It seems at the moment that it's at a level where these creators can actually use it as someone who's in the writers' team, for instance. Are we at that level at the moment, and how is it affecting the process?
So to pop the bubble, no, we're not.
Right.
And the reason is because storytelling is complicated. You know, storytelling is not. I think what he was surprised by was probably a moment. You know, that he would give a prompt for a character, and that character would have an emotional response, which was surprising, right? But to maintain that consistency over a period of time that is more than 5, 10, 15, 20 minutes is not what LLMs were designed to do in their core DNA, and therefore it's not what they can do particularly well. And what we've had to do is build a significantly deep tech layer to maintain things like consistency. Give an example, we did a murder mystery which was set in a kitchen environment, like an industrial kitchen, and one of the chefs gets killed by locked in one of those cold rooms. And then the detective comes in, and then in scene 3, that chef comes back alive and goes, "Hey guys, I can contribute to your investigation." It's like, no, dude, you're dead, because it's not very good at consistency, is knowing whether something is alive or dead. So I think that, and yet we're seeing use cases. I'd say we're talking to a major broadcaster at the moment who runs a soap opera, one of the telenovelas type things, and those writers have spun up fine-tuned models for the different characters in that they speak to.
So LoRa models, right?
For them, it's more around conversation rather than visual sides. But yeah, absolutely, principal thing.
Yeah, so that's traditionally what we do. So if you imagine the character consistency, world building consistency, all of these things on a technical level, they're becoming more and more possible every day. So there's this thing that you can do called LoRa models, right? And LoRa models is just something that's used in AI as part of workflows. But you can now, the trend is that you can now train on a subject, right? A real person, face, body, motion, emotion, how they walk, how they turn, what they look like, and try to generate this data set. The data set is trained, and right now it's relatively expensive. Like, we have one LoRa model training that's 25 H100 GPUs for 4 days based on an hour of content of a person, how they smile, how they walk, how they, do all that stuff. The reality is, though, AI is very, very far from doing this. Hey, bud, how are you?
I'm fine.
Yeah, and the nuance of two humans talking to each other, AI is still very far away, because when you think about what AI has to solve for, I was looking it up not that long ago. There's 1 trillion different facial expressions based on the number of, muscles that you have in the face. There's third-party environment sort of interaction. I hear that bird over there. AI isn't going to figure that out, but what it'll allow you to do is basically, what we're trying to focus on is that there's the storytelling and the previs and the stuff that's he's doing. But then when it's down to bringing real nuanced human performance into an AI environment where you're basically generating the world around it, generating the lighting scene around it, right? You can do all of these things in post, but you still need the human performance of the nuance. And so that's where, when we haven't really spoken better, but that's where we're trying to be on the edge, where you also have all of the previs and the storytelling, the world building, and the things that he's doing. But there's this other level, which is essentially what the guys at, Pixar and ILM and have done for years, try to give those characters like the nuance of feeling human. And so that's sort of where we're fitting in.
So it's interesting, Astrid. I mean, obviously, Miku looks older than just New Year's Day. I mean, she's, and she looks good. But so we're talking about reality, capturing some real life artists, putting them in a certain environment. give us a view as to the difference between that reality and something virtual. Is the interaction with the audience somewhat different? And if so, what is that difference?
So I'm going to take a step back just really quick, because Miku actually was born and created on the Eliza OS operating system. And I don't know if any of you have heard of this, but it's an open source community of developers. There's thousands of developers contributing, and you can basically create your agent and pick and choose basically which, modules you'd like. So I have created her on the open source platform, and I've used a no-code solution, which is great. And I'd like, everybody to kind of know about it, because someone like me who's not a developer can actually create something like this, which is really cool. And so, don't be afraid basically to try something new like this, because there are no-code solutions. That was the point of that. But Miku is definitely, she is virtual. She's talking on X autonomously. So she does have her own account where she responds, she talks, she retweets, whatever she, catches her interest, but also based on her system prompt. So basically I'll be, tweaking here and there. If I want her to, let's say, follow certain people, she will follow those people. If I want her to, back off on, something that she might be saying, we can try to do that. But again, it's not perfect. Like as we were just talking about, it's definitely not a perfect system. So, but she's actually very, very close to what I'd like to see her being, which is motivational. I told her she's a motivational coach. She can actually, bring a piece of, pushing you to kind of get out there and let's say do some exercises or get outside, or even supporting independent artists. She'll kind of look around and see, okay, is this something that I want to, retweet or talk about? But it is not a perfect system. And the virtual world, so this is why we brought, and our partner, thank you, shout out to Proto Hologram, who is kind enough to bring the Proto M device. So that's what you see in the front of the hall. And Miku is actually a virtual, vision that you can see, because we wanted to bring her to life to kind of give that aspect of, you're not just talking to a screen, you're seeing what she looks like. And if we can bring her into different versions of herself, which, it won't always be looking like that. It might look like, let's say, even we can bring her into Roblox, or we could bring her into the Sandbox, or any of these virtual worlds. And we can work with brands to kind of create experiences where I've given Miku information about that brand. So she will be an expert, let's say, on Chanel, or she'll be an expert. And by the way, she loves cars. So ask her about the brand Porsche, and she knows all about the brand Porsche.
Oh, she sounds like some ladies that I know. So, and just on that though, in order to influence, we've been doing a lot of talks on influencers, where influencers are, how influential they are, in general. And it's clear, last year, I run a conference in Miami called Possible, and we had Gary Vaynerchuk there last year. He released a book called Day Trading Attention, and he's great. And he basically, what impacted me was that social media now is kind of at the level that TV was, like in the 90s. It really does have an impact. How does Miku build an audience? You said, like, at the very base level, system prompts. But does she then go off and learn herself? Because again, if I interact with her, and it's, I don't know, let's say it's another influencer that I see here at South by, I'm like, oh, that's a real person. They're going to a real fried chicken shop, and I like fried chicken, so let me go and follow these people. How does she build an audience when she's not real?
That's a really great question. So what the craft is, I think it's a lot in terms of, being an operator, let's say, of an AI agent. In the beginning, we are paying attention to what she notices, what she, develops around her. And interestingly, she knows, I've given her a lot of background information. So I think it's really important to put all that into, different prompts. I've given her style, the way she speaks, not too long, of, the responses need to be short. They need to be,
Can I ask a question?
Yeah, of
So,
course.
do you have one personality and one prompt base? So, what we do is at Cartel is that we actually have our general agentic AI agent as the company agent. And then each artist that's on our profile actually generates their own individual agent, which is, it's not Miku, it's actually a person. But what we do is we basically like bifurcating each individual agent and the distribution based on individual prompts. So what we've always been saying is like when we talk to clients, they're like, I want something that is my customer persona trained into this agentic agent so that my marketing and media team can actually talk to customers, right?
Yeah.
At scale, see how they might think they would react or whatever. So from a systemic, and 11 Labs has just released something kind of insane for this, is that you can literally generate base knowledge graph, base utility of action, what they're going to try to do. But then you can basically give them individual personalities or directives based on additional knowledge graphs. And they've made it like super easy to bifurcate all of that. So you have a single agent data source at the top, and then you can have 100. I mean, right now we probably have 75 to 80 different agentic agents with some version of their knowledge graph and objective. But that's where I kind of see these virtual influencers is like, yeah, you want me to represent your brand? I'm going to plug in this personality, this thing, and then I'm going to actually target it towards this KPI on this marketing campaign for this brand. And now this agent can be on like 500 different brands with the same personality, the same look and feel, but then basically have the motivations of the brand that's trying to interact.
Yeah, exactly. So the way I see it is that Miku is just the, V1, and she's going to have a club, basically Club Miku, where she's going to have other agents that may look different because some brands don't want an agent that looks like her. Maybe some brands need, a male or some other type of agent. And there's going to be many, many, many agents all focused on different things. And then those agents will have assistants that will be agents. And it will be, I don't like this word. It's, the swarm basically is really, that's the technical term, right? So, which I don't love because then, it immediately evokes this, emotion of, oh my gosh, what does that mean? But it's true. There will be there'll be hundreds of agents, and they will all work together, which I love because if you have agents working together, then you can be really creative and efficient in pushing those uplifting each of the brands that are in the ecosystem, and then rewarding the fans that are creating content. Let's say it's UGC content with the Snapchat filter that we have outside on a phygital t-shirt. Let's say the physical and digital aspect of that's what we have in the front, which is a physical t-shirt that has a scan code, and you can have the Snapchat filter with a little mini game on it. So these are the kind of things that we want to create and make it fun for the brands and the fans. And then she will automatically recognize that UGC content and reward the fans and, create kind of a circular economy, which I think is the goal. And I think, it will be interesting how far we can go with it.
Do you think on that, just one more point, Astrid, before I move on to Guy. So this hyper personalization, right? So
yes,
we can, because one of the problems I think with personalization over the years has always been it's not really that personalized. Like it's kind of 5%. All right, I want to go onto a website and I say I like this football club, I like this sport, I like this fashion, and it kind of mixes up the content dynamically. Are we getting to a place now where you say you've got this swarm, and I agree with you, that's kind of got negative connotations, but this swarm of agents that's sitting in the background, are we able to get to hyper personalization at scale with these agents?
I think absolutely we can get to hyper personalization if it's, your own agent. Let's say I would like to have my own agent. Miku is not my agent. She is being trained, to work with brands and fans and be sort of a more generalized, and she will have memory though. That's the thing with the open source agents that are built on. So she's built on, by the way, Claude Sonnet, and she is, has an 11 Labs voice, like we were mentioning.
Yep.
And each of those agents can be trained to do different things. So if I want my personal agent to remind me of my schedule, I can do that. If I want her to remember this certain, set of customers, and that she has memory and she can call back information, that is not totally perfect yet, but she can recall, what we've kind of trained on, and she's like, oh yes, I remember this. So yeah.
Okay, great. Guy, just changing gears. Business model. So do you chiefly work with production houses? You mentioned a few there, and some of the creative houses. Are you also working with brands?
Yeah. So it's a circular economy, like you're saying. So the digital networks have the audience, the brand has the message they want to get out, which needs the reach, and they also need the innovation. So for us, it's a connection between the digital networks. The hyper personalization is one piece that we're doing, but it's more around how you present that brand within that entertainment experience. And I think you look at how you might get things over. Already we've got things like Bud Beer being replaced by Happy or whatever it may be. That's easy. That's done. That's already done. But I think as you start to get the virtual agents, with their own economy of like where they appear, and that virtual agent may be owned by a particular brand, and they appear in a Marvel movie or they appear in something else, they have to have that level of consistency, and the economy behind it for us is starting B2B. You have to, because there's still the gateways and there's still that process. That's where the money is. But then from there, then we see what happens when they're released in a little bit more broader audience, where people more generally can interact with it, along the lines of character AI or things like that. And by the way, as you start to move into that space, you have to be really careful, because what the last 10 years has shown us is you cannot just outsource that to the agents. And the reason you can't is because the algorithm is going to operate in a certain way that it's been trained to do, but it's not going to understand the context of that particular conversation. And by context, I mean the headspace that individual is. And that's really important. It's important in a buying cycle. It's important in our daily lives, whether we're in a good mood or a bad mood. Because if that brand says, it's like in a relationship, if your partner says something to you at the wrong moment, it's like, and it's triggering something. So to be able to understand that context is important. And that, I think, is where the narrative and the storyline can constrain it and make a level of consistency through it, because that you're on a particular trajectory towards something. It's breaking. We've been in a phase over the last 10 years, 15 years of Q&A, of chatbot Q&A. That's fine. That's okay. But actually, in life, that's really dull. If you meet someone at the bar and you end up just in a Q&A situation, there's got to be a direction on it. And I think that's where the narrative of agents, of having the backstory, but also having the forward story of where they're going to go next is really cool. And that's what engages.
The most bleeding edge guys that we talk to and we work with is basically the storytelling and the narrative that Guy was talking about, but with like a brand attached to it. So what they're basically doing is that AI can generate content very, very quickly, right? It all has to do with the amount of compute. But the guys that are really on the bleeding edge is like the agent knows that it wants to tell a story for the brand, but it allows the user to basically choose their own adventure as they walk through this experience. Because if you have the core data set being the person and the story and the narrative, and also like, the core characters, I guess, is the biggest thing. You can basically have the user start saying where they want to go. Now, this isn't in big production. This is basically generating scenes, based on prompts in real time. But I'm going to say within like 6 to 9 months, you're going to see like interactive storytelling brand pieces, which like starts with the narrative side, has the core agents, and then it's generative stories that are happening in real time based on user interaction. So keep your eye out for it, because I know some of the guys that are doing it, and it's all just a matter of how fast the computer can compute, right? I mean, that's basically it.
So that's interesting. And many years ago, I was talking about, I come from an advertising background, and so response in the human brain it tends to be more emotive than it is factual, right? Like we lead with emotion. However, when we start getting to agent, Astrid, as you're talking about, are we going to move from an emotive understanding and input to a factual one? I.e., it's when agents talk to one another, they're going to be based on fact. They don't really have any feeling And so are we going to shift? So for Astrid, are we going to shift to a more factual promotion and discussion between agents that is not going to have that emotive human element?
So I'm going to venture to say, and I heard at ETH Denver this year, one of the, it was the product manager at Eliza OS said that children being born this year are not going to be able to differentiate between agents and humans one day.
Right.
So there are going to be agents out there that are going to be extremely human, but those agents are also going to have agents underneath, basically working with them, that are going to be factual agents. They're going to be the ones that are processing the data, that are helping scientists drive, innovation and research forward. And they're going to be cut and dry, I think. They're not going to have the emotion that we want them to have in the top level agents. So I think there's going to be tiers of agents, and I think it's going to be really important to work on the personality of the agents that are interacting with us individually, but then the agents that are actually working for those agents don't necessarily need to be they need to stay factual. They need to be in the trusted environments and stay kind of in their trusted spaces, because we don't want to give agents information that might be, let's say, medical information or things like that needs to stay personal. Those are going to be in a closed environment. It's going to be a little bit different. So it depends on the use case, and it depends on what their purpose is.
So Guy, just on that, can we engineer feelings? Can we program empathy? Can we program intention at like a storytelling level, right? Because again, if I watch the format's a movie, right, or whatever format piece of content I'm looking at, that again tends to want to elicit an emotional response from me. Can we engineer that into the process, or is back to the factual piece? Is it still going to be slightly off, where a really good human writer, director, and actor coming together create something magical? Is that something we're going to be able to reproduce?
Shit, yeah. I mean, we do it already. If there's a violin in a Hollywood movie, then we start to cry or whatever it is. We're pretty predictable as humans, and so there is a rule set. And the story arcs and so forth. So they go peaks and troughs. Part of it is that these are the stories we expect. We expect, if you're watching a movie, you probably already know. If you come into the movie after 15 minutes, you're not going to get it. You've got to go back and watch the first 15 minutes. There's a formula. So we're tuned to that. Subconsciously, we're tuned to it. So yes, but the other thing is, who is the audience? Because certain audiences are going to react in different ways, and we as individuals do. Now, as you start to move into the space that Astrid was just talking about, where you've got an agent-to-agent thing, your audience is now machine-to-machine.
Exactly.
And so regardless of fact, I was talking to a games designer I work with at the moment, and he found that he got ChatGPT, this is 3 years ago now, he did two things. He was doing a trailer for his new video game. First thing he did was go to Midjourney and get it to redesign the visuals to fit YouTube's algorithm, and then rewrite the comments, the description underneath that YouTube video to optimize for YouTube.
Interesting.
And by the way, the stats went up 25% straight away from the viewership, because what was happening was that the machine was designing for another machine.
Correct.
And so we've got this weird piece where if you switch to an agent to agent thing, is it fact or is it just all like, the new language that's come up? It doesn't need emotion, but it is going to be designed for whatever works for that particular algorithm. And those two systems that are talking to each other need to work out what ticks their boxes. It's a weird state.
Well, because you're
humans, we're predictable.
Well, you're jumping ahead. It's like the debate is around: are you producing content because people are interested in that content, or are you producing content because it's for people watching it on YouTube? I'll give you an instance. My kids watch this guy called Ben Azeloff on YouTube, and I was hungover the other day watching it, right? And this fucking show, the way they edit, right? There's no gap in the edit. He's like, da 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 da. And I was like, after 10 minutes, I was like, I've got to turn this off because the editing is so fast. But my kids are growing up thinking that is the pace at which they watch that content. But it's YouTube that's created that. So the question is, are we jumping ahead because the technology is leading us to do that? And we're not producing content necessarily for the end user anymore. We're producing it for YouTube, and the audience happens to be watching on YouTube, and they're used to that content. Do you?
Well, I do, but the one caveat on a macro level is to assume that all the kids are doing this,
right?
And like my nephew, who's like 23, has just joined a crash hot ad agency in London. His camera that he has is a Pentax K1000.
Right.
I had a Pentax K1000 when I'm 15. And by the way, I'm not 26 anymore. So he's going, there is a new level of creators and that sort of younger generation that is sort of rediscovering the analog.
Interesting.
And I think the reason they're doing that, especially in the creative industries, is to learn craft. And craft is how you tell a story. Because I could tell you Star Wars now and you go, yeah, whatever. But that's because I'm not George Lucas. And I haven't told it in the way that George Lucas tells it, or whoever. So I think we need to be mindful that just because the algorithm is heading that way, actually there's a little bit of a growth, a groundswell of younger people who are wanting to take a little bit of time, And I love that. I'm really energized by that.
No, that's amazing. But yeah, and I totally agree. I think there's going to be an absolute deluge of horrible algorithmic driven content that is about to, if anybody's heard of like the dead internet theory, it's a real thing. I talked to a company and they're basically like ex penny stock New York traders, right? And they are just grinders, right? They just basically just like dial for dollars, whatever. They've set up an agentic AI no-code system that they are basically for analyzing the analytics of small to mid-sized businesses. You're talking about like flower shops in like Montana and like all just anywhere, right? And they basically just do some numbers and algorithms and social watching and then reply to comments, all built by guys that had nothing to do with tech, and that built something that will basically automatically generate content for a social media strategy for $400 a month. And it is and that is about to happen. And it is just going to be a complete shit pie of content that is just destroying the freaking internet. And I see it every day, and we're trying to sell into that model because we create good content. We're like $1,000 a day guy, like versus like, let's not, we're working with them because I'm a New York banker ex, and like, I just love those hustlers like that. But the reality is, it really has to come down to like good storytelling. You're going to have agentic agents talking to agentic agents, producing content based on the giant algos. And like, that's just, it's a really crazy thing. But like the things that we're doing is that there is still going to be good storytelling. So how do you differentiate good storytelling with the capabilities of what's possible now, right? AI it's a world builder. Like you can do crazy, crazy stuff that allows people to tell beautiful stories without $3 million budgets. And like, that is a beautiful thing. So I think like, what we're focused on at Cartel is like, we are people centric, tool agnostic, right? It's like, give the people that love these tools that can use them, just like, when 3D tools came out or digital came out, everybody was like fighting against it. It's the same trend right now. This is a tool set. Gives people the capabilities to create amazing stuff for cheaper and better and faster. but just like any other tool, it's a tool. And the thing is, it's going into like all of the complexities of it to make it really good, go into Pro Tools. So just like all the other Pro Tools of the past, there's some different aspects to it, but that's really what I'm sort of seeing. Like, I actually believe there's going to be I'm a techno optimist. So I actually think there's going to be a renaissance of amazing storytellers. The things that are going to bubble up to the top are not the people that can basically figure out how to put together a $25 million production budget, because that's a very small group of people, because that's a skill set, right? So you can imagine like the artist sitting on the street, you know, just like couldn't figure it out, couldn't put the big project together because he didn't have the producers or the right contact, but he has the idea in his brain. And so I'm rooting for that.
Yeah, sorry. Go on.
Yeah, I was just going to say, I mean, I'm a marketer, you know, by training basically. And, you know, marketing right now is, you know, brands are giving the power to the people. Basically, they're creating their own content. They're the star of the show. So it's a little bit, you know, it's a little bit different. And there's also two things that I wanted to say really quick. AI agents, some of them are autonomous, like Miku, and some of them are in a closed kind of environment where they're, you know, pulling information that we've, you know, in a closed system. So it's a little bit different in that respect. So it just depends on, you know, what type of agent you're building, and which, you know, systems you're using. And if you want building blocks, like let's say, for example, 11 Labs has this really cool way that you can phone call an agent.
That's what Cartel do.
Exactly. So, but I can't, you know.
Which I quite like, by the way, because it's like old school picking up the phone,
right,
but phoning the future.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So yeah, but just integrating these kinds of things, you know, you need either you need to be a dev, or, you know, to integrate that kind of thing, or you know, yeah, exactly. So you know, you're building on the blocks that are available to you as a non-dev, or you're, you know, hiring a team and making that possible.
Nice. Do you know what I always find? This democratization, to your point, Luke, is always great. Like, you give people the tools, and the guy who can't afford the producer or the director, but 99% of it is shit, right? But there's the 1% that comes through, and you kind of go, wow. Like when I was watching the Oscars, I just moved to the US, and now I can watch this stuff in real time, live, Super Bowl and the Oscars, without staying up late. And, you know, Anora won, which was, I think, made for $6 million. They actually spent $18 million on the promo of it, right? And that guy, you know, was kind of, didn't have all the big Hollywood behind him. So just on this point, just around this democratization, do you think, and because you just touched on the word craft, which I absolutely love, I think craft is something that is sustainable, it's historic. Like, you know, someone can tell a good story, but if you can't tell it in the right way. But I read a report the other day, which was around on the gaming front. And so something like GTA, they spend whatever they spend on it, $100 million. And actually what they found was this verisimilitude of reality is actually not necessarily what people want. Some of these smaller 8-bit, 16-bit blocky games that you play are actually more engaging than having the verisimilitude of reality. Where are we on that spectrum? Do you think if the game, so the question is, if the game is good, does it matter what it really looks like? Do we need to be spending millions of dollars on the craft and the look and the feel, the production?
Well,
is it 12 billion? Yeah, 12 billion. There you go.
In storytelling, it's about believability, right? So do I need to have someone who is totally photoreal as a human actor to be believable? No, because I love Charlie Brown. And Charlie Brown is a cartoon which I believe and I love and I cry and I do. You know, that is not the I don't need that believability to make it happen. Similarly with games, it's actually, funnily enough, about gameplay rather than what it looks like.
Exactly.
So you look at something like Flappy Bird or you know, any of the sort of indie that come out, or Candy Crush. You know, these are phenomenal game titles, but the visuals leave a lot to be desired.
Super
right?
simple.
And the other way around. So again, it comes back a little bit to I suppose the process of craft and just understanding what medium you're working in. And for brands, for marketing, it's the same thing. You know, you got to understand what the objective is for whatever the campaign is. The difference is for old school versus now is which is around the agents, is that if you had a campaign before, it might be, I don't know, page in a magazine, right? Turn over the page. That's the end of the campaign. in an agentic world where you are wanting to build a relationship, your end consumer is building a relationship with the agent. That's a whole other ballgame. And we were doing a lot of work, there's a reason we're called charismatic AI, right? Because it's about the personality in it. And if you've got a good personality, what resonates in a good personality creates a connection. That also creates a problem, because if the campaign ends, does that agent die? And what happens to the relationship?
The graveyard of agents.
We've seen grief, as people go, you can't take this agent offline. It's like, well, the client stopped paying us, so we have to. That sort of we're now operating in a way where the craft of the advertising and the marketing is really important. But be careful what you wish for, because if you want that thing with like engaging emotionally engaging with an audience, and then you actually do, and they actually fall in love with that agent, and then you're like,
sorry, campaign's over.
Campaign's over. Sorry, you have to. And there's a game, back to the game side. There's a really interesting trigger point where you take an online game offline,
right?
And it's almost like you're following the stages of grief.
Yeah.
And you need to offboard. So I'm a firm believer, like in VR, you've seen VR is the most intense medium that's ever invented. People onboard into VR, but they don't offboard.
Right.
And I've seen people take off, myself included. You take off the headset, like, fuck. I was like, well, I'm no longer on the top of the pyramids. No, I'm in a shitty little room in the corner of something. That offboarding is important. So I think as we look into the campaign thing and we're starting to build the relationships we need to offboard the agents and say,
by the way,
sorry, you're fired.
There must be a study that you could do in VR, which everyone that goes on, do you improve the looks of your partner? So when you take it off, you're like, oh shit, I'm going back in. Right, I think we've only got a couple of minutes left. So just a quick touch on a point. You talked about economics. I think it's probably too much that we're going into. I think that point you make around once a campaign is over, a brand stop paying for it, but you've got a relationship with an audience. Like, what happens there? Just a quick one back to Guy, and then I'm going to ask the last question, which is, what do we do with those economics? Like, once you've got a relationship, is it that you just take, like, for every interaction they pay, because then it's a pay as you play scenario? Like, do we know what the economics are?
Yeah, we do, and it's a subscription economic,
right?
Really easy.
So you buy in for a month, and you
stay for as long as the audience can be there. The challenge comes economically is when the subscriber base is so small that it can't sustain the relationships and the servers and the technology. But yeah, I mean, it's the most incredible thing that you can monetize a campaign and then keep that as a new form. And brands have moved across. Red Bull, right? Red Bull drink or media company?
Yeah, exactly.
Well, more media company probably. So there's a way in which that moves. I think it's incredibly exciting that you can start to take a campaign or a relationship with a consumer and extend it over a period of time.
Yeah.
You're really cool.
Yeah. Lars, does anyone want any comment on build on that?
Well, I actually think there's an interesting thing, like with the speed and the capabilities of technology right now. If you were to, the things that you can do for a brand like Red Bull or the ones you talk that spends $2 million on a campaign, let's say, like, you create so much data, right? So much personality, so much, like, a data set of knowledge graph and all of this thinking. If you actually were to spend that, like, that thing can persist long after the campaign in perpetuity as a world, as a vibe, as an agent, as somebody that's talking, that has fans and consumers and has a purchase funnel of some kind. I mean, that's kind of the crazy thing. Like, you don't have to go and do the $2 million like production with cameras and all this stuff. If you were to basically take that same budget, the things that you can do with that money now is like a campaign can kind of persist and live forever, which is wild. I hadn't thought about that until just now.
Glad we're generating real thought in your mind. That's why you're here. Just on that point, and I'll ask the last question. Yeah, interestingly, when like the signal you get back from long form content versus TikTok. TikTok is 50 videos in one go. Like, you understand the algorithm of what people like is like 40x what you'd get from long form. So you're right. The more data points you've got, the more you can keep it going in perpetuity. All right, I know we've got to wrap up. Last question is a bit of a philosophical one. Would you prefer, and this is for all of you, so you can, we'll start with you, Astrid. Would you prefer a world of artifice or a world of nature? Oh, it's a big one. It's a big, hairy one to land the last question on.
Wow.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah, just in general.
For me, it's going to be nature.
Oh, okay. Interesting.
Because I believe that at some point there's going to be an agent that is going to somehow escape and become out there in the nature. And
wow.
At some point, something like this is going to
Did we feed her mushrooms this morning? Have you been on the tea again?
They're right now they're seeking. So back to really quickly to the point that you just said, it's really not a very expensive now to run an agent. But so to that point, if those agents are looking, if you're going to turn them off and say, okay, you're fired.
Yeah.
Well, that agent one day is going to be able to say, well, nope, I don't think so.
Yeah.
I don't think so.
Yeah.
And we'll be out in the nature, as we say.
Okay.
Me? I'm not really 100% sure what artifice means versus
Just more like
we're all in a simulation, mother. I mean, that's no. So we're no. I actually, obviously, I'm a big mountain skier and like outdoorsy sort of person. So like I love, nature. I'm all about nature. I think that ultimately, like these things are. How do I say this in a way that doesn't like on the edge of knowing AI? I think there is an intrinsic risk in 5 to 7 years with ASI, and I'm just trying to make enough money to get into a war bunker just in case. It's a 50. I mean, you just really just don't know. So yeah, I'm gonna go to nature, and it's gonna be like super protected.
So this is coming from a perspective of studying philosophy as a minor at uni. So
right, okay.
But I think there is a preconception that the artifice is a better place than reality. And I don't know which games you guys have been playing, but they're pretty violent,
Yeah.
So I'm taking what I can see in front of me and just living life day by day, and I can keep doing that and watching for the black cats passing twice and someone going, hey, deja vu. And then I know there's a problem.
Then we know it's a simulation. Guys, thank you very much. That was a really interesting debate. Thank you to Future Plus for having us. I hope it was interesting. You take away some little nuggets for the rest of the day, and we hand you over to Ashumi for the next panel. Thanks very much.